What is going on, Sports Wars? We're here. We're live for some Monday evening quarterback. And yes, I know I look like I'm in prison. I look like I'm an insane asylum. I might look like I'm in a bunker in Ukraine, but no, I'm not. I'm here in Indiana doing a little bit of traveling. But on the road, we still got to make sure we make time for MEQ. And speaking of that, we got Robert Barnes from sportspicks.locals.com. How you doing, man?
Doing good. The World Cup started on Sunday. We had a good, fun NFL on Sunday. We had a very eventful Saturday for college football that now is setting up for a real penultimate matchup. I figured you were in Indiana so you could cheer on Notre Dame to beat USC.
No, I think I'll actually be leaving the day of that. I think I'm going to be driving when that happens, but I'll be making sure to shit talk every Irish fan I see. I'm in the area. I'm around South Bend right now. And I will remain around South Bend, 30 minutes either way the entire time. But yeah, haven't seen too many Fighting Irish fans out there. Did see some Illini fans that were out and about for their game on Saturday, which was far too close for comfort for, I think, any Michigan fan. And I honestly thought when they ended up kicking the field goal to go down one, I thought that might be over, and paid off. And Harbaugh continues to sneak by teams like this. He's not going to be able to sneak by anybody next week, though, with Ohio State.
Yeah, that's going to be a great game. USC Notre Dame it has playoff implications. That should be a good game. You have Alabama and Auburn, Washington and Washington State, Oregon and Oregon State, some of the traditional rivalries. LSU and A&M may be a little bit underwhelming given how A&M is playing. But it too may have playoff implications. TCU, Iowa State, before TCU goes to the Big 12, as they manage to keep surviving, just by the hair of their chinny chin. So, eventful college football weekend, eventful NFL weekend. I mean, the Packers are really in trouble now, given where they're at, looking like they're going to be out. And, the sharp money was on the Dallas Cowboys, and by golly, I don't think anybody's going to be screaming for Dak to be benched this week after that whooping they put on the 8-1 Vikings in Minnesota.
I wasn't expecting that. We said here on, I think, Monday Evening Quarterback, it was like, could they go up there and blow them out? Yeah, they could. I don't think it's going to be. I think it'll be a close game. Certainly it was not. It was the blowout that a lot of people expected it to be. And I guess if you see a big spread like that for a road team, maybe there's something to it. And we certainly saw that. Kirk Cousins in an afternoon or a late afternoon game. Maybe that was it.
Yeah, just a little bit past 1 o'clock. And the World Cup had some fun start. U.S. and Wales played to a tie. U.S. dominated the first half. Wales came back in the second half. Gareth Bale penalty put and they almost had chances. Both teams almost had chances to win it at the end. Indeed, Wales might have won it on a kick from midfield with like 10 seconds left in the game, but because the goalkeeper was all the way out and a smart U.S. player took down Gareth Bale before he could break some American hearts. So they all get to live another day. England treated Iran like it was 1950s Iran, and beat them 6-2. The Iranians are the ones politically protesting for freedom and liberty. The Iranian team is the one who refused to sing their national anthem and joining with their local protests back home, while the players learned that they don't get to wear those little rainbow bands that they wanted, but the English still took a knee to fight racism in the world. That routine. Netherlands held on to defeat Senegal. The first game, Ecuador beat the host Qatar, first home team to ever lose a World Cup, but they looked like they were just shell-shocked and terrified to be playing on the world stage for like the first 30 minutes of the game.
Were they like, so did they make it, or did they just get to do it because they're a host team?
Just got to do it because they're a host team. My knowledge, they never made the World Cup before. Pretty small country, Qatar. And so the fact they even have a team is impressive. But it's
basically the equivalent of go like the under 17 or under 15 boys squad facing the U.S. women's national team, right? That's kind of how. Yeah. And in this case, Qatar was the U.S. women's national team.
And they've overachieved in some friendly competitions and some other competitions. They were just too nervous. Ecuador was a team they could beat. But you could tell they were just, they've never played, I don't think, especially home crowd, 100,000, global stage, billions of people watching. pretty tough to keep your nerve, and that they struggled with that, which was a little tough for the host to see. But there's been a lot of complaints about how a lot of the media and other people that are there, like, why in the world is this tournament in Qatar? Issues with them trying to block cameras from filming, questions about whether they have really kind of they have inadequate housing set up for fans. You can't drink at the games, of course. Beer has been banned at the very last minute. So then
That's crazy.
And then a lot of people didn't know, some of Qatar's rules about gay rights and some other things. Not the most generous jurisdiction on that side of the aisle.
And some people also knew exactly what it was and have gone there intentionally to try to press buttons, which, do whatever you want. But if you get you can't sit there and then complain about wearing a gay pride shirt and them not letting you in. If you're intentionally stirring the pot, it's you're going to get what you fucking deserve, basically. And that's what happened. I do just have to say, the fact that we are competing with Wales that has, I just looked it up, a population of 3 million people. That's it. That's all that Wales has. And it's it's a good, we gave up a good fight. We tied them. Good game for the Americans. How sad is that? They've got a fucking, about 1% of the number of people we got in this country. You're still able to field a really good soccer team.
But they have the football history. Even though they haven't been to the World Cup since 1956, they play a very tough defensive style. They have Gareth Bale's even though he's on the backside of his career now he plays in the U.S., one of the great all-time players. They have a generation of players, Aaron Ramsey, other guys that are really unique, tough defensively. I think people will see a lot of it throughout the World Cup, matchups of African, Latin, North American teams, including Canada, that have a lot of speed but don't have as much experience as some of their European opponents and aren't as physical. And so you'll see a matchup of speed versus physicality. But it was mostly, so far, it's been a fun World Cup. It's been entertaining, not too controversial in terms of what's happened on the pitch, at least. So we'll see how it continues. The games start tomorrow, and there'll be 4 games a day now moving forward. And they start at 5 a.m. Eastern time. So, for those folks out in the West Coast, heck, if you're out in Hawaii, you can be up late at night and watch the first game. So they go from basically 5 a.m. Eastern time until 2 o'clock Eastern time. 4 games a day going through through the first couple of match days, first 2 weeks or so. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. It is the most bet event from a sports betting perspective in the world, the most watched sporting event in the world. And we'll see the big fun teams are coming up. Argentina, Lionel Messi, and the rest. And of course, people want a deeper dive. They can watch here at Sports Wars the big World Cup preview done with my brother and Cody and I.
There you go. So that's about it for our World Cup talk, because this is about football. This is about actual football, not whatever the rest of the world calls football. We're just here talking about what Americans call football. And that, of course, we always start with the NFL, then we move on to college football as we go along. But when it does come to the NFL, we talked about it originally. We got to talk about the biggest blowout of the week, and that was the Dallas Cowboys heading up to the Minnesota Vikings at home for Minnesota, and they got embarrassed. I believe the final score is 40-3. At least that was the last I saw it. So that's massive. And this was a Dallas Cowboys team who actually, there were some questions floating around about Dak Prescott and about this offense. Certainly seems like they've cleared all that up.
No doubt about it. Sharp money was on Dallas. The public was on Minnesota. I was on Minnesota. And that was, it was, a late afternoon start. So maybe that's the Kirk Cousins, not 1 o'clock afternoon curse. But they didn't come back and bounce back well from that game. It is the first time, I think somebody said in about 40 years that an 8-1 team with their starting quarterback had been an underdog at home. But Dallas proved, Dak was back. Their offense was clicking. They showed why they are. Now, for those folks looking forward to Thanksgiving, just a little FYI, Cowboys are 1-10 covering the number in their last 11 on Thanksgiving Day. So on the short week, Cowboys haven't always been money in this situation coming up. But they looked like the best team in the NFC on Sunday, that's for sure.
Yeah, they were very impressive. I wasn't expecting that. I thought it'd be a good game. I thought it would be a really good game, especially with the way Minnesota's performed. But now a lot of people, all of a sudden, Vikings lose that one. People are going to start evaluating Minnesota and say, well, are they really as good as we thought? Look at all the very close games they've won, things like that, which is to be expected. I personally think they're probably much better suited as when people kind of forget that they're as good as they actually are. I think they'll probably thrive a little bit more there. But the other best team in the NFC, or at least what people have been throwing around until they had their first loss last week, they needed a come-from-behind victory. They needed a score in the last 2 minutes from Jalen Hurts to survive against Jeff Saturday's Indianapolis Colts. The Philadelphia Eagles do manage to avoid losing 2 in a row.
Yeah, that was a rough one. I had the Colts, the Colts spread covered with ease because that was 7 points. But I had them on the money line at getting about plus 250, 2.5 to 1. They were leading large parts of the game, was feeling good. Then saw the Eagles were driving, and it kind of it was like I knew when the Chargers scored at the end. I was like, oh no, I got the money line again, plus 2.5 to 1 or thereabouts. It's plus 220 in that case. And I was like, Mahomes is just going to drive right down and score. And he'll do it like 30 seconds left. So the impressive Jalen Hurts needed to get a big win on the road, went and got it. Jeff Saturday so far impressing as the head coach of the Colts. 2 back-to-back covers, 2 good back-to-back games. But the Jalen Hurts proved his mettle by being able to get back. The when they needed it and had to get it, they got it. Much as Mahomes, you knew as soon as he got the ball back, Chargers might as well just cash in their tickets now because that game was over.
Yeah, and speaking of that game, again, Jeff Saturday has been, I think, better than maybe some expected. I don't really anticipate that continuing for super long in Indianapolis, but we shall see. When it does come to that Chiefs-Chargers game, I was watching it at a local bar. I actually had some Chiefs fans in there getting really excited about every single play Patrick Mahomes had. But as soon as the Chargers went down and scored with 1 minute and 40 or something left on the clock, with 1 or 2 timeouts for the Chiefs, it's like that is an eternity for Patrick Mahomes and that squad. And, I even thought when they scored with 35, 40 seconds left, well, we'll see what Justin Herbert can do. All it took was one very bad decision to try to, take that lane up the middle and get that 20 yards until Chris Jones just kind of slides to the side, wraps him up, and he's done. That really was a drive killer for them right off the bat. Otherwise, I think the Chargers had a decent chance to go down there and try to do something. But those games are always close. I'd be really interested to see what the results are for maybe the past, 4 years of Chargers versus Chiefs. It always seems like it's a really good game.
Absolutely. It's a great division rivalry and proved to be a great game again. So credit to the Tennessee Titans going in on Thursday night and just putting a beat down on the Packers. I mean, they're even booing Aaron Rodgers at the end of the game. Green Bay, you don't hear them boo players very often, if at all, in Green Bay. Clearly a great disappointment that team, the Cowboys game was supposed to be their bounce back, show back up. Yes, we're going to make a run here for the playoffs. Then, again, to lose at home. I mean, this is a team that has now lost to the Jets and the Giants, who weren't, either in neutral sites or at home, and now lose at home to Tennessee Titans coming off with a lot of banged-up players. Tannehill looked good, but mostly their defense just shut down Green Bay's running game. And so Green Bay is on the verge of being eliminated from the playoff hunt. Here we are midseason. Yeah,
they're 4-7. I don't know who had bets that, maybe the Bears offensive production would be more exciting to watch than the Green Bay Packers at this point in the season. Although I think my thoughts about Justin Fields are very well known on this channel. But yeah, it's rough for the Packers. I think people were wondering what it would be without Devontae Adams. Nobody expected it would be this bad. And to go in at halftime to booze, like, we're not talking about them being down at or like whatever, like going at halftime to walk back to your locker room, head off the field to booze from that Lambeau Field crowd. They've certainly been spoiled the past several years, or the past couple decades. I think Aaron Rodgers had one really bad season in there when he first took over. That's about it. They've been blessed with some pretty fucking good football up there in Green Bay, and they are not happy with what they're seeing. And me as a Bears fan, I couldn't be happier to see it. It makes me smile, the fact that this is how Aaron Rodgers' tenure with Green Bay potentially comes to an end as he gets booed off the field. I would love nothing better than this to be his last season there. So he can give up his ownership rights to the Chicago Bears.
Bears almost got the Dirty Birds down in Atlanta. The offense continues to find a way to put up points. But Atlanta ultimately came back and held on to pull off. I mean, one of the surprise teams of the year, the Atlanta Falcons, continue to play pretty good offensive football, not always good defensive football. And then the Detroit Lions, speaking of the NFC North, go into New York, and Beardo's not here, so we can rag on the Giants.
Very interesting, right? Interesting. He decided that he had to do a bachelor party or something. He had to go on a trip, right? When the week that the Giants get absolutely shellacked by the Detroit Lions, who've now won 3 straight.
I know, and the offense is finding a way to click again. So, whatever Belichick did has been unwound by they got out of that trap a couple of games where they couldn't score, and then bam, ever since that fourth quarter against the Bears, they've been all of a sudden they got an offense back again. So impressive to witness. And speaking of teams that don't have any offense, that Jets-Patriots game was one of the ugliest games on Sunday. Patriots needing a punt return for a touchdown to pull it off. But Belichick off a bye. There's some people who shorted him, and I was like, do that to your own risk. He does seem to find a way to win. And now you have an NFC East that's kind of packed. I mean, with the Dolphins, the Bills, they moved their game from cold, windy, snow. It was so snowy in Buffalo, they had to play people to get their players to help them dig out to get to the airport to get to the game.
That was crazy. They really should have been there like a couple days before. Like if you're gonna move it, if you're gonna make that decision, they should have moved the entire team there for a couple days, I think.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, can you imagine if a bunch of guys couldn't get there in time? That would be embarrassing. But depending on where you got it, either the Bills covered if you got it early, if you got it late, then it was either a push or the Browns, because the Browns scored late. But the Bills seem to click without much difficulty. I mean, that team is still, as long as Allen stays healthy and doesn't throw too many picks, that the Bills are still one of the top 3 or 4 teams in the AFC. And maybe right there next to is Miami, and then you have New England, who can beat anybody on any given day. And whatever the Jets have done defensively, they've been a solid unit after being one of the worst defenses for a couple of years running. So that AFC, it continues to be packed with talent.
It is crazy. I didn't really think that would be the case this year, but yeah, Bills and Dolphins at 7-3, Pats and Jets at 6-4. And
not competing for talent is the team that continues to set records. They keep screwing me because I keep thinking their defense won't continue to suffocate other opponents, and their offense won't continue to be atrocious. And so I think this week will be the week it goes over. Nope. Raiders going to Denver, beat Denver in overtime, and Denver still can't score. They just can't. They can't get past 18 friggin' points, which is usually the bottom of the league in the NFL. The worst team in the league usually averages at least 18 points a game. They can't get there. I mean, it's just incredible. I'm trying to remember, when's the last time you had a big, high-profile quarterback go from one program to another? And you've had some people that, your Alex Smiths, your Matt Castles, you've got some guys along the way that weren't, had 1 or 2 good years. Not someone like Russell Wilson, who's a Super Bowl winner, 2-time conference champion, get paid $250 million and just be awful week after week after week after week.
It is miserable for them. I'm going to go to the numbers right here. Yes, the Denver Broncos are averaging 14.7 points a game. Bottom of the league.
And that's like the Miami Dolphins from a couple of years ago when they scrapped their whole roster to build for the draft of the following year. You just don't see that.
And this is a team that people thought were poised, where they looked at them and they're like, okay, you got Judy out there. You got some weapons that you can utilize. Like with the right quarterback in place, this team could be a good offense, a top 10 offense. That's what people were thinking. And holy shit, have they been wrong? And there is a lot of hate right now for Russell Wilson. So now it goes beyond just his performance on the field right now. Now that he's performing this way, other people now feel empowered to call him out, because it's tough to call out a guy who's going 12-4, 11-5, 10-6, and putting up big numbers. But now you have a lot of his former teammates that are just blasting him, that are just crucifying Russell Wilson for how fake he is, for all the off-field stuff that he does. And he is getting hammered right now. And speaking of that, I might as well pull this up. People found an interesting stat right here. And it could apply to more than just people like Russell Wilson, because there's some other quarterbacks that have stats that could potentially match this. But I thought this was interesting. NFL World reacts to horrible Russell Wilson news. And that news would be this. Russell Wilson only has 2 more touchdown passes this season than Joe Flacco. And Joe Flacco hasn't played since week 3. Not very dangerous right there. But, I mean, look at all these reactions. The Broncos gave Russell Wilson a 5-year, $242.5 million extension. Ouch. And Zach Wilson still has less touchdowns than Joe Flacco. That's a good point. You know how I know this guy's trash? He can't beat Derek Carr, crying Derek Carr. Does he still have more, or does he have less touchdown passes than bathrooms in his house? Washed. This has to be fake. I don't think that's fake. I think that's 100% legit. I think that has to be a legitimate stat. We'll look it up right now as Robert reacts to that.
This is a guy who left Seattle because he believed that Pete Carroll was holding him back, and he believed that he was the next Tom Brady, that he wanted Tom Brady level stats, Tom Brady level titles. And what's now being proven, especially with Geno Smith's performance in Seattle, is that he was overachieving in Seattle, that he had a good deal in Seattle, and that Pete Carroll understood what his limitations were in ways his ego didn't comprehend. And it's got to be one of the biggest busts in history. I mean, it's like drafting Ryan Leaf. That's what giving Russell Wilson $250 million is worth. It's like drafting Ryan, and half of the league wanted to draft Ryan Leaf over Peyton Manning, right? Can you imagine if that the team that was number 1 had drafted Ryan Leaf over Peyton Manning? I mean, that's what giving Russell Wilson $250 million looks like right now. And one thing's for sure, that coach, that there's no way that head coach still has his job after the season. The only question is who gets fired first. With a couple of the coaches on the hot seat, this guy's got to be on the hot seat.
And Nathaniel Hackett also had something to say. He said something interesting about Russell Wilson as well. He didn't flat out throw him under the bus as this headline would indicate, but he did criticize him for not ensuring the clock continued to run in that fourth quarter when they decided that they were going to pass. Because again, Nathaniel Hackett is now known to put the ball in Russell Wilson's hand. Put the ball in Russell Wilson's hand or he gets crucified for it. So he puts the ball in Russell Wilson's hand and it ends up being an incomplete pass. The clock stops, allows the Raiders to get the ball, force overtime. But he said, we call the pass play, but it is the quarterback's responsibility. He's got to be more cognizant of the time and what we have to do out there, that he has to keep that clock running. So you have the coach calling him out a little bit. You have obviously social media calling him out and destroying him, rightfully so. But not only, did they give up so much, to Russell Wilson financially, they also gave up a ton in picks to get him there. It's not like they just signed him. They gave up a lot of what they had in the future, a lot of their draft capital in the future to get this guy here. And he's been a complete and total embarrassment so far.
Yeah, I mean, reality, other than Peyton Manning, the Broncos have been known for making horrible quarterback choices since John Elway's left. I mean, unless you count Benji, little Cutler there. Jay Cutler, you guys got to enjoy Cutler there in Chicago for a good while.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, he had one good season.
Exactly. That's Cutler. That was classic. He was very much a scheme guy. But if you followed Russell Wilson's career, NC State, Wisconsin, Seattle, he was all with great defensive coaches who were really good at maximizing his capacity and minimizing his limitations. And he just never appreciated that. He didn't understand that. He's the kind of player that, kind of like Fields to a certain degree, transferring from Georgia to Ohio State, then getting a high draft position. There's just limitations. You look at Fields, how different really is he than Russell Wilson? You know what I mean? I mean, if you put Fields in a certain scheme, maybe I don't think he does Russell Wilson numbers from Seattle, but maybe he's a lot better. Kind of like Geno Smith. Geno Smith, he's plug and play in Seattle. He's putting up better stats than Russell Wilson did last year at Seattle. And nobody saw that coming, given Seattle's decimated roster. So, it's a debate so far has been answered, and the answer is that Russell Wilson was maybe one of the most overrated quarterbacks in NFL play and was very much scheme dependent, coach dependent.
Yeah, not good for Denver. But to head back to Justin Fields, we talked about it briefly, the loss to the Atlanta Falcons. I haven't kept track of it, but it feels like the last 6 games have been all right. The Bears have a chance at the end of the game. Justin Fields, go down the field and make a play. Okay, you put him in an actual known passing situation. Just can't do it.
No.
Now, to be fair, one of those weeks on a fourth down play when he was rolling out to the right, he threw a dart. He threw a great pass that hit his receiver right in the hands that he missed. Right, he just fucking dead dropped it. So you got to give him that. Would they have gone down and actually scored? Who knows? But that one you can't necessarily put on him. But all these other ones, it's to me, as someone who's been skeptical of the Justin Fields project, it's confirmation bias to me that it's like, this guy is not going to be able to do it long term. Is it exciting? Yes. Is it fun when he rolls off a 60-yard run down the middle of the field? Yes. I just think defenses are going to adjust to that. And I think we saw that a little bit in this game, even from Atlanta, especially in that second half, when Justin Fields would move out to escape. And instead of swarming, Atlanta would say, all right, guys, hey, just chill out here. Just chill out by your guys. He's not going to throw it. Like, he's not going to throw the ball. Once he makes that first or second read, that's it. He's off. All he wants to do is run. And it's exciting for sure, but I just don't think it's winning football sustained.
Oh, no, I agree. Of course, the nightcap for the weekend will be in Mexico City tonight. Ooh. With San Fran traveling down to Arizona. Arizona 8-point underdogs. Did we find out whether Kyler Murray's going to play tonight or not, or is it still a game time decision?
I'm about to look at, when you said that, I was starting to wonder. Let me look at Schefter's usually the first one.
The chat is pointing out that the great Tim Tebow did play for the Denver Broncos, so I shouldn't omit the great Tim Tebow.
You should. He's great in college, and he's a great guy. He's a great person. He's a great human being. Not a good NFL quarterback.
No.
Not
another
good
scheme
NFL
guy. Another, somebody that Urban Meyer made look a lot better in college than he was ever going to be. Somebody says Murray is out. It's Colt McCoy.
There you go. I think that I don't even know if that's a bad thing for the Cardinals, to be honest with you.
Not the way Kyler Murray's been playing. And Colt McCoy seems to be more of a natural in that system, frankly, than Kyler Murray's been this season. I mean, Arizona has bottom 5 offensive stats with Kyler Murray at quarterback. So I know they're 8-point dogs. They may go up to 9 or 10 with that move. I lean towards Arizona, but we'll find out. How they play in Mexico City, neutral site. Probably more San Francisco fans there, just because San Francisco fans always travel better than almost everybody. But you never know if there's like some native Mexican fans that are like particularly like a particular team or not. That could be a curveball.
Arizona's pretty. I could see like there being some Cardinals fans in Mexico right there. You know what I mean?
Around the border.
Yeah, I could see it happening, but who knows? It's always tough to tell with international crowds. And maybe they won't even go. Maybe they'll just be too concerned about the World Cup. They won't even show up to this game.
I think Mexico is going to be they've always got out of the group stage since I think 1994, and like all but like 1 or 2 tourneys since the 80s. I don't think they will this year. They have a big matchup against Poland early that I think that might trip up. There might be a lot of depressed drinking going on in Mexico this week, depending on how that works out. I got some friends that are always pumped for that game, so I give great credit to the Mexican fans. Those fans are intense. And the World Cup, fans traveled well so far. People singing, people chanting, people all of that. That the vibe you get from the stadium is good. There's nothing, but it might as well be. There's nothing else to do in the whole country. So
yeah, you can't drink. I don't even know if you're a woman if you can be there. I don't actually know.
It's against the law to talk to a woman outside on the public.
Correct.
So, like some of these people don't know this. Some of these fans are coming. They're like your classic, young drunk guys. They're like, "Hey, how you doing?" And it's like, you're about to get killed, bro.
I saw this dude, this like fucking 25-year-old white guy probably, who like somehow ended up in some guy's house with a lion. Like, you know, like it's just insane the crazy stuff that goes on. But you do have to be cognizant. Brittany Griner should be a lesson to everybody. Be very aware of the rules of the places that you're going. And just because you don't agree with the rule does not make it any less legal in that country for them to fucking lock you up for it. In Singapore, if you spit your gum on the ground, they hit you with a whip. They lash you like 50 times or something. Like that's an actual law. So you got to be careful. You can't just walk around expecting to be the exact same from where you're from. That's a recipe for disaster. But let me get a couple of these. Eric K with 5 gift subs. Thank you very much, Eric K. Appreciate you, and shout out to all you guys that are now Sports Wars members. Bert for $2. What happened to your Zelensky themed color palette? Yes, I was wearing an army green shirt yesterday, and I did. It looked like I was a Zelensky update. Like I was trying to convince everybody that Russia just fired a missile into Poland. That's what I looked like. And the chat was very quick to let me know. Your black nerdy homie for 3 over on Streamlabs. I was expecting to be underwhelmed by the football guys' soccer analysis. I was blown away by the Barnes Clan's World Cup preview show. It was like watching the Wu-Tang Clan lyrically flowing at their peak. Never would have guessed that was you, brother.
Gracias. My brother and I have been fans since we were kids. We saw the U.S. World Cup. We saw the U.S. play in the U.S. World Cup when it was hosted here. Went over to Germany, saw the World Cup there. So been fans for a long time. Pretty much a fan of every sport except what? I mean, do you call women's sports really?
No. You can't call them entertainment either. So it's kind of you're kind of in between.
Well, women's mud wrestling. Does that count?
That we just put that in porn. Same with women's beach volleyball. That's closer to porn than it is a sport. So yeah, I think we can put it there. But let's move on from the NFL and from the World Cup into the NCAA because we are 1 week closer to having a very good idea of what the college football playoff is going to be. And we might as well start off all the way over in the West Coast, the matchup that a lot of people have been looking at and wondering what's it going to be like. And that was USC going to UCLA, a great game decided by 3 points, very high scoring. And USC comes out on top and really sets the stage for a potential college football playoff appearance.
I mean, that was one of the best games. I mean, the TCU Baylor game, fantastic, but even better was the USC UCLA game, especially if you like points and you like offense. USC, I don't think punted until the very last drive they had in the game. I mean, that but they drove, failed a 4th down, missed a field goal, had an interception. And so UCLA would jump out to a big lead. USC would come back, take the lead. UCLA come back, then USC come back and back and forth and back and forth. Fantastic game all the way through. DTR for UCLA had a real game effort. He was banged up, still played hard. Caleb Williams put up a very good stat line. The receivers were ready to go. Jordan Addison, the backup running back, proved that he's not much of a backup talent-wise and played very well. Fun game. The best USC UCLA games going all the way back to when, Keyshawn was there in that rivalry. Troy Aikman was in that rivalry. Cade McNown played for a while in that rivalry. The best games were crazy high-scoring games. It's in the Rose Bowl, which is a beautiful place to see a game. But it's because UCLA doesn't have a hardcore fan base football-wise. They're basketball fans. It's usually split half, USC, UCLA. So it's like the Georgia-Florida game. So it's almost like a neutral site game right there in L.A. So a lot of fun, great game, back and forth, really enjoyable. Not too many controversial calls, not too many bad plays, mostly just with 2 good offenses against 2 mediocre defenses, just throwing haymakers at each other, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Quarterbacks trying to take on linebackers. It was a lot of fun to watch. A great, great game. It didn't come down to the last second like TCU Baylor, where Sonny Dykes almost screwed up and didn't have his team ready to run out with no timeouts to kick the field goal. I would have loved that ending because I had money on the money line for the Baylor Bears. But TCU, the heart attack kids, cardiac kids, just keep finding a way to win and getting closer and closer to that surprise final playoff spot. Michigan, needing a last second field goal to have to win against Illinois. The tough running back who had a hurt ankle for Illinois came out and played. Blake Corum, this will be the big thing to watch this week. The star, really the only true offensive star on the Michigan team. banged up, couldn't play the second half, only played one down. That would be big, bad news for Ohio. And Ohio State had to struggle against Maryland.
They struggled that first half. I think, weren't they losing after the first half?
Oh, yeah, they were. I mean,
Yeah.
the basically 2 look-ahead spots and 2 elite teams that got caught looking ahead. Illinois, Brad
Illinois is a solid team. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maryland is not.
No,
but still, neither of them
weeks.
should have been struggling against them, though.
No, it showed a real weakness of Ohio State.
Yeah, and
especially defensively, that a good, competent. Now, I don't think Michigan can throw on them because I don't believe in the Michigan passing game very much, especially if Blake Corum's not there as a running threat or out of the backfield as a screen threat. But it told me that Ohio State, from what I saw now, Kentucky, give them credit coming off that bad loss to Vandy. Vandy then turned around and pulled a shocking upset over Florida. So, Vandy's on their back-to-back SEC heyday of, they haven't had in since James Franklin was there. But Kentucky hung in that game, played a classic Mark Stoops defensive matchup, kept Georgia in check, stayed in the game. Their offense was still terrible, but they were in the game through the fourth quarter. Just a 10-point game until late. But overall, when I see Georgia's capabilities versus what I've seen from Ohio State's defense, what I saw from Michigan's offense, I just don't see either one of those teams as you definitely wouldn't make them favorites against Georgia. Georgia will get Georgia Tech this week, which managed to completely spoil North Carolina's chance at the playoffs. They're playing like their 4th or 5th quarterback with their interim head coach, and they go in and beat Carolina.
There's a lot. I mean, and we obviously got to talk about the elephant in the room, which is the Tennessee Volunteers. That was a beat down that they got by South Carolina. And obviously, your quarterback goes down as well with a torn ACL. Now, I don't think that affected the defense, 63 points from that South Carolina team, but that pretty much shatters all hopes that Tennessee has of a playoff appearance as well.
No doubt. I mean, it's still going to be they should take care of Vandy this week, even with the backup quarterback. I don't think the Vandy quarterback will pull a second Spencer Rattler. Spencer Rattler looked like the Heisman candidate he once was against Tennessee. 63 points, just touchdown after touchdown after touchdown. Couldn't stop him. The Tennessee defense it had an unprecedented collapse. The offense was still in it until late, and then Hooker's injury kind of finalized the deal there, which is too bad because he's had such a great season. Hopefully he still gets a Heisman invite to New York. I think he deserves it. Even if he's not going to get the Heisman, he deserves to be one of the guys there. But you never know with the way the Heisman voters are mostly Yankees. There's more voters from the Northeast where there is no college football than there is from the Southeast. And that kind of tells you everything you need to know about what I like to call the Heisman Award. Now, if you were a sportspicks.locals.com subscriber, you would have had money on South Carolina to pull that upset straight up because I had put out South Carolina as the 10-1 underdog because I thought that was a classic trap game. South Carolina has enough talent, enough schematic matchups that Tennessee beating down Missouri the way they did, perfect place to pull a shocker. And, of course, that's what we saw. In fact, we had Hawaii. Hawaii won straight up as a 3.5 to 1 underdog. We had Virginia Tech to win straight up as almost a 4 to 1 underdog. They did. The only big long shot underdog that didn't win was Nebraska, and that's because they gave it up at the end there to Wisconsin, who scored 12 points in the fourth quarter to maintain their win streak there. But the other shocker is who the Ohio State Michigan winner awaits. I had the under in the Iowa Minnesota game. It was 31, the lowest under total in like 30 years. It still went under. It was safe. Only had to sweat overtime. Iowa wins. Iowa is now on pace to somehow, with one of the worst offenses in all of college football, get to the Big Ten title game.
Yeah, who's their next matchup?
I'm trying to remember who is it they have left.
Let me look. I'll click on it. I think I'm over here. Nebraska. Nebraska
can't. I mean, they're on backup quarterbacks. Nebraska can't score. 3 points and 15 points. This will be my bad beat of the week. The team that's now limping their way back into the playoff picture, though the North Carolina loss probably hurt them, is Clemson. And so I had the Clemson Miami under, right? And the under total was like 48 and a half. It's 40 seconds left. Clemson has the ball. They're up 33-10. So, I mean, it's like, okay, there's nothing to do. 3 kneels, end of the story. Clemson goes for it until they score a touchdown. And that's Dabo Swinney, knowing that most poll voters, are too lazy to actually watch the game, and they're looking at score reading, and they're going to see Clemson and the name Miami and say 40-10. That's more impressive than 33-10. And so, but that was probably one of the most egregious examples, screwed my total bet, but one of those egregious examples of running up the score I'd seen. And Dabo Swinney gets an undeserved reputation as this, cordial, convivial, whatever kind of coach. No, he's not. Nobody works the refs more than he does. Nobody's got more beneficial officiating from the ACC over the last half decade than he has. And that was something to behold. But they're probably back in the playoff hunt as well, even though North Carolina's loss to the Nerds sets them back. Georgia should roll the Nerds this week. But Florida State might still be a decent rivalry game, depending on whether Florida steps up. If you look at the statistical profile, Florida should have beat Vanderbilt by 24 points last week. It was one of those fluke games that happens 1 out of 100 times where one team statistically dominates and enough weird stuff happens that somehow the other team wins. TCU, I don't know how much longer they can keep barely surviving. I think they've had like 5 or 6 games like that this year. I think they face Iowa State. I would let everybody know Iowa State has a history. Yeah, they can't even go to a bowl game because they lost at home to Texas Tech last week. But just a little reminder, Iowa State has been a giant killer for years under this coaching staff. And maybe they're the ones to trip up TCU. Otherwise, it's probably TCU and Kansas State in the Big 12 title game. But so there's, people be watching that TCU game. Obviously, the Michigan-Ohio State game on at noon. That'll be the big one. That'll be the one everybody gets all the hype. If Blake Corum can't go, that might not be that close a game, given Michigan's limitation. Ohio State's weakness is clearly their pass defense. I haven't seen anything from Michigan that they can pass against even any competent pass defense. They don't have the skill players.
How is it that, Michigan with Harbaugh and with what Harbaugh has been able to do, pretty much everywhere else he's been in terms of quarterback play, like it's been a decade and they haven't figured it out there. Like that's strange to me. Now I don't know. Of course, I'm sure Jim Harbaugh wants to be smash mouth run, of course, but the quarterback play has been so poor that it's tough to explain when you look at the other things he's done at other places.
My hypothesis is that all those other places were on the West Coast. Now, he also made Colin Kaepernick look decent for several seasons in the NFL. But I think at the collegiate level, you can screw up in your recruiting. And if you're in California, you're still going to stumble on a good quarterback. Whereas at Michigan, it's not like, you might think of it as a quarterback haven, but you really have to recruit nationally because you don't have a bunch of talent in quarterbacking talent in state. Not like California, at least. Really not even like Florida or Texas. And so I think maybe that's a part of it. The other thing is he's never figured out an offensive coordinator. Now, he may have David Shaw back because David Shaw keeps losing at Stanford. So maybe David Shaw will end up back united with him at Michigan, and maybe they'll get that offense going. But I agree, for a quarterback whisperer coach, but it's kind of like Jimbo Fisher's. Like, how do you get the number 1 recruiting class of all time, and now you're not even bowl eligible, and you struggled to beat UMass, the worst team in all of college football, at home last week? This is a guy who's great at covering the big spreads. Didn't get close to covering it. Didn't even half it. Didn't even score enough points to cover the spread. And that we'll see whether they're even competitive with LSU, who now can backdoor their way into the postseason. And then, Arkansas absolutely obliterated Ole Miss. Ole Miss didn't come alive until the fourth quarter, and that was because Arkansas didn't care anymore because they were up 42-6. Ole Miss padded some stats late. But I wonder how much – you look at Hugh Freeze, big, possibility of getting an Auburn job, loses at home to Virginia Tech, a team with a losing record. You look at, Lane Kiffin wants that Auburn gig. Big chance to beat Alabama, blows it, then goes on to Arkansas, and they just razorback them. I think, and we'll see. Now, the Egg Bowl should still be fun. Kiffin against Leach, You got two of the biggest talkers in all of college football up against one another. A rivalry of real hatred. That could be fun. Alabama, Auburn, give Cadillac credit. Cadillac's got that team playing hard. One of the sports recommended picks last week was Auburn was only favored by 4 at home against Western Kentucky, who had played a very soft schedule. They blitzkrieged them. And that team's playing with passion. Like, you wouldn't expect that. Your coach fired, disappointing year, et cetera. Cadillac has that enthusiastic kind of approach. He might even be playing his team into consideration, and given, if he were to pull off an upset at Alabama, by golly, he might be able to pull it off. So we'll see what that looks like this week as well. So there should be big games on the table and fun games on the table this weekend.
That's right. Rivalry week is always fun. And listen, I'm hoping for Nebraska to pull it off, to be honest with you. I want to see my Purdue Boilermakers in the Big Ten championship game against Ohio State.
And they would at least be competitive. They would at least be fun. I mean, we know what's going to happen when Iowa gets there. If they get there against Michigan or Ohio State, it's going to be like 42-10. I mean, they just don't compete with those teams. That's what happened last year. And the offense is even worse this year. Whereas Purdue can be a game underdog on any given. I mean, Purdue, I think, would give the best matchup against either Ohio State or Michigan. They would give the West a fighting chance compared to the weakness of the rest of the West this year. Illinois, in its own way, with its great defense, can always hassle and harass people.
We saw it last week, obviously. Yeah,
absolutely. But for a fun game with a live dog, Purdue would be the best one to see.
Purdue's got some better skill position players, and they got a quarterback who's willing to sling it around out there. So we'll see. I'm hoping. They're going to take care of the Hoosiers, the Oaken Bucket game. You might as well just make it a P every single year at this point. People thought IU was going to be good. They're finally going to be relevant. No, fuck off. The Indiana Hoosiers are garbage. They're always going to be garbage. They had one fluky season. They're fucking done. All right. So Purdue's going to win that game.
They did beat Sparty last week, to my surprise. But
they can't even get 10,000 people in their stadium.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Michigan State not having a good year.
A historically bad year for Michigan State, in fact. Really bad one. But that's what happened this week, and a little bit of a preview for next week as well. Robert, as always, thanks for joining me here. We do this every Monday, and then every Wednesday we do Against the Spread at 9 p.m. Eastern time. Where can people find you and your entire team if they want to know more about sports betting?
Yeah, we got World Cup previews, World Cup picks, NBA reviews and recaps. People that have NHL systems, people that have NBA systems, people that have college basketball systems. We put out picks for college football and the NFL every single week. We give you on average, at least 50 picks to pick from that you want. It is the best. You can join for free. And if you want certain subscription member-only exclusive services, it costs the cheapest of any handicapping service in the entire country. It's only $10 a month. And you get 2 months off and get the whole year. So it's even cheaper in that instance, and you get the best value. Profit up already over 60% this year, more than doubled our subscribers' money last year. So it's one of the most successful handicapping services for the most affordable. And if you just want to get a range of third-party opinions, we put up opinions on people's ideas about fantasy, people's idea about props, you name it. You can get it at sportspicks.locals.com.
There you have it. So thank you guys. Make sure you go over there and check it out. Again, it's free to join. It's free to join the community to see what people are talking about. So Locals is great. And we do have Geeks and Gamers Locals as well. You guys can check that out. That's where, whether you want to talk about sports or whatever, Geeks and Gamers, the overall hub for that over on Locals. Thank you, chat, for hanging out. Thank you, Eric K, for always modding. We appreciate it. Over on Rumble as well. You guys are awesome popping in here. Always a party wherever we're at in the Sports Wars chat. We'll be right back here next week, same time. Thank you, everybody. We will talk to you later.